We heard some interesting comments from Russell Wilson after Sunday's mock game. And, Danny, it had to do with some freedom that he might have now, at least compared to last year.
Like William Wallace-style freedom?
Freedom! Yes, that kind of freedom. The kind of freedom that you win at the Battle of Bannockburn. Wilson, when asked about the difference between the Schottenheimer offense and Waldron offense and what he could do at the line of scrimmage, had this to say.
I think that I've always been able to change the play for the most part, along my career. I think, Shotty allowed me to call the plays and stuff like that at the line of scrimmage when we needed to. I think the emphasis of being able to do it all the time, all throughout the game, is the key. I think that's a little bit different, in that sense. But, I think that I have freedom, obviously, for sure. I think the fun part is we have just so much that we can do and so many reasonings and so many whys to it. I think this is what's really been really exceptional.
When I hear all the time, it does make me think that Russ might have unlimited power. And to be a little more specific, before the game, Tyler Lockett had been asked about some of the differences with the new offense. And as opposed to maybe being 15 plays or so that they could change into, they have now 40 to 50. So it does seem like they have a little bit more to work with. And I am curious as to what this entails as far as the kind of control that Russ has at the line of scrimmage. Or maybe if this is closer to something that was taking place in Los Angeles where Sean McVay and Jared Goff clearly had a very close relationship via the headset, where McVay was able to help out Goff until the very last seconds of the play clock, usually before 25 or so, before they eventually would line up, snap the ball, etc.
When does the headset cut off? Does it cut off at 15?
I think it's
cut
15.
Off at 20?
Yes.
Because that was one of the things you felt with the Rams, that they went fast because McVay wanted to be able to talk to Goff right up until he snapped it, right? And there was a little bit that I felt that might have been because he thought his quarterback was a dum-dum. And that he wanted the last thing that Goff – he wanted Goff making all decisions when McVay could still talk to him. That's not the case with Russ, right? Like, nobody thinks that about Russ.
We're not sure if he's Peyton Manning, Tom Brady level at the line of scrimmage, but he's definitely really good. And Russ even said that he and Shane Waldron seem to be on a much different page than the page you just described with McVay and with Goff. Here is Russ again.
The extension of me and Shane is, really, as you guys probably saw some today early on, is just the ability for him to call something and then me to be at the line of scrimmage and go to something else if it's not the right look and this and that, and just to be able to play super fast in that way and get us to the best play and best situation. And there's several examples in today, and so I just think that's a really good thing, and we're on the same wavelength on that sense.
Sounds great.
I agree.
I've always thought that Seattle's offense hums best when they're playing fast, and Russ might have the most control at the line of scrimmage. I've always felt that way. And I've understood why you can't always run what is their 2-minute or their 4-minute offense throughout a game. But the number of times that I've seen that offense stink out loud for a quarter and a half, and they're down 14-3, 14-6, and they really haven't got anything going. All of a sudden, last possession of the first half, they match the total offensive output they've had on their first 4 drives with one touchdown drive right before halftime. And it changed. You're like, why couldn't you do that sooner? So I'm all in favor of Russ having a larger say in what they run and how fast they run.
And one of the things that we saw in the mock game was that when they were moving the chains, that's when they generally seem to pick things up. Now, I don't know if that continues into the preseason games. We'll see on Saturday, of course, in Vegas against the Raiders, if that's something that is continuing from the mock game into that. I would imagine it would. So it kind of brings us to this point now where, okay, Russell Wilson definitely has a little bit more freedom, at least in his own mind, this coming season. And, Danny, you had asked the question in our show prep email, is this a make-or-break year for Russell Wilson? And I started thinking to myself, maybe it's one of two different options. Is it more of a make-or-break year for the Seahawks with Russ? Because they clearly are giving him a little bit more freedom and maybe a little bit more faith this season, at least based off of those comments that you just heard from Russ. Or is it more of a make-or-break year for Russell Wilson at age 33 as a mobile quarterback that is getting older and older? He will be 33 in November this year, older and older in a league where mobile quarterbacks don't tend to last very long. He has been the exception to that rule thus far in his career.
I think this is a question of how Russ feels about the team going forward. And I think that's what's at a make-or-break point this year. I think how this season turns out, not even how they get there, but how this season turns out is going to determine and go a long way to determining whether or not we have not just what happened last offseason, but something that goes a step beyond that. Like, they kind of sidled up to the edge of the cliff last year, right? Like, Russ kind of sidled up and pushed it like he was unhappy, he was frustrated. He expressed that publicly, which had not happened before. And then the dialogue that happened, it went from there to his agent providing 4 teams he'd be willing to accept a trade to because of the tension that was brewing behind the scenes. If they have a similar result, or even if they win a wild card round playoff game and get torched on the road in the divisional round of the playoffs, which that's been the best case scenario over the past 6 seasons. Yeah, I think I think it is a make or break year for Russ with the team. I'm not convinced it's a make or break year for Russ as an elite quarterback. I do think that this is a make or break year for Russ and the franchise.
I look at it from this perspective, though. He has not had a good second half of the season in his last 2 seasons. And is that going to happen? Is he going to be able to do what he did in 2015 at the end of the year? Is the amount of hits that he takes and just the way that he plays over a 17-game slate less sustainable now? You know, we've asked that question about some of the older quarterbacks in the league. I know we do it with Drew Brees every year. We assume Brees is not going to be good down the stretch. I thought the same thing would be the case with Phillip Rivers last year. We saw it with Ben Roethlisberger down the stretch. Now, obviously, those guys are older than Russell
Wilson. Yeah, they're
Wilson.
like 5 or 6 years older, right?
Right. But does Russ have a little bit more wear and tear than the average 33-year-old quarterback given the amount of times that he's gotten hit? It's not to say that he's necessarily older or anything like that, but I do think that we have seen a little bit of a sign of slowing down.
I agree.
Literally,
he's not as fast
down.
as he was.
Right.
With Breeze, though, you could see it, right? You could see it in his arm and the way he threw the ball. Like, you could see that with Peyton Manning. I'm trying to think, other than that, I don't think Russ is as fast as he was. And to be honest, I've thought that the top end speed that I could see, he's not been able to run away from defensive linemen, let alone linebackers, in 5 years. I've felt. I haven't seen any signs of physical limitation. I haven't ever felt that, like, oh, he just can't make that throw anymore.
I haven't either, so then maybe that lends itself to, okay, the offense that's upstairs, is that actually helping Russell Wilson? And I think you could make a very strong case that last year Brian Schottenheimer was the biggest detriment to the Seahawks down the stretch. So things might be different. What if there's a similar result this year, Danny, and Russ still realizes that he is getting the kind of thing that he always wanted, which is what he is describing right now? Do you think that he's going to look at himself in the mirror and say, oh, well, it's going to work somewhere else differently? Or do you think that he might think to himself, you know what? It took Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers a year to mesh, to gel. I'm going to give this another shot. I hope it's the latter. I really do. He should be honest with himself if it does perhaps end the same way and think to himself, you know what? This might just not be something that can be fixed in 1 year. Maybe it takes multiple.
Can we find a different example? Because I don't think Rodgers and LaFleur are the best example for finding peaceful, copacetic, get along long time. Because I know that Rodgers is mostly mad at the GM, but that didn't seem to be that sustainable.
It didn't, but then last year happened. And I imagine
and then
Rodgers...
he asked for a trade or was unhappy or whatever happened this offseason. Like, Aaron Rodgers is not the model that we're hoping to replicate here.
Yeah, I guess. It's hard to get these guys to be realistic, to be rational here. But is Rodgers going to do something better in another situation? Would Rodgers be what he was last year anywhere? And I think a lot of people would argue yes, but I don't necessarily know that. I mean, it feels like he actually finally found a guy that is pretty good at putting things together. And, you know, we always talk about how Aaron Rodgers has no help around him. Well, if Aaron Rodgers has no help around him, I mean, LaFleur's doing a pretty good job up there.
If you're going to try to convince a quarterback who feels he hasn't been properly supported and given the proper accoutrements to succeed that he should be happy because it's not going to be better somewhere else, good luck. Good luck.
I know, but it should be the case. It really should be. You're right.